At the dawn of 2026, the Kremlin's strategic calculus seemed absolute. Moscow's blueprint for the spring and summer offensive was designed to achieve one definitive goal: the total collapse of Ukraine's remaining defensive lines, Donbass, forcing Kiev to the negotiating table from a position of unconditional weakness. For 4 long years, Russia had relied on a grinding glacial war of attrition, slowly trading thousands of casualties for mere meters of broken ground. But by June 2026, that blueprint has not just failed, it has been completely shattered. The paradigm of the war has shifted. It is not the Russian military machine pushing forward. Instead, it is the armed forces of Ukraine executing a calculated, highly precise counteroffensive. In a staggering reversal of momentum, Ukraine has reclaimed over 600 square kilometers of occupied territory within the first 6 months of the year. What was supposed to be Putin's triumphal march has devolved into a series of localized panics, forced tactical withdrawals, and a deep systemic failure of Russian operational doctrine. Today, we break down the military mechanisms behind this sudden shift and how Ukraine managed to turn Russia's grand offensive into a strategic nightmare. To understand the scale of Russia's current predicament, we must look at the hard operational data. On June 8th, General Oleksandr Syrsky, the commander-in-chief of Ukraine's armed forces, confirmed a critical milestone. For the first time in nearly 2 years, the net territorial balance has swung heavily in Ukraine's favor. Nowhere was this more apparent than in the May campaign. According to internal Ukrainian military assessments backed by verified satellite imagery from the Institute for the Study of War, the ratio of liberated to lost territory in May was roughly 100 square kilometers in Ukraine's favor. To put this in perspective, during the exact month when Russia's spring offensive was supposed to peak, Russian forces lost more territory than they managed to capture. How did this happen? It comes down to a fundamental clash of military strategies. While Russia intensified its assault tempo across the entire 1,200-kilometer front lines, particularly focusing on the Pokrovsk, Huliaipol, and Oleksandrivka axes, their approach remained rigid. They relied on mass infantry assaults, often referred to as meat grinds, supported by dwindling numbers of armored vehicles. Ukraine, facing asymmetric odds, adopted a multi-layered defensive-offensive doctrine. Instead of matching Russia shell for shell, the Ukrainian General Staff utilized a strategy of deep operational interdiction. By striking deep into Russia's strategic rear, destroying fuel depots, command nodes, and electronic warfare units, Ukraine successfully bled the frontline Russian units of their operational capability. When the Russian assaults stalled due to lack of supply, Ukrainian mobile brigade tactical groups struck the weakened joints of the Russian line, reclaiming vast swaths of land with minimal casualties. The 600 square kilometer liberation metric is not just a random collection of open fields. Geographically, a significant portion of these gains occurred along the critical Oleksandrivka axis, a vital junction connecting the Donetsk, Zaporizhia, and Dnipropetrovsk oblasts. In early 2026, Russia attempted to bypass the heavily fortified Donetsk fortress belt by launching a pincer movement through this sector. However, the Ukrainian military anticipated the maneuver. By utilizing dense, remotely delivered minefields and advanced Western-supplied artillery, they funneled Russian armor into pre-registered kill zones. Once the initial Russian thrust was blunted, Ukraine launched swift, localized counterattacks. By early March, nearly 400 square kilometers had been retaken in this sector alone, exposing severe structural flaws in Russia's secondary defensive lines. To mask these failures, the Russian Ministry of Defense resorted to what military analysts call gray zone infiltration. In April and May, unable to hold actual fortified positions, Russian commanders began sending micro-units, sometimes consisting of just 1 or 2 soldiers, into the disputed gray zones. These soldiers were left with a single instruction: hide in shell craters, avoid Ukrainian reconnaissance drones, and wait just so Moscow could claim operational presence on paper. But hiding is not holding. This desperation, masquerading as occupation, quickly collapsed under the weight of Ukraine's terrifyingly efficient drone network. In May alone, the scale of Ukrainian precision strikes reached unprecedented levels. Reports indicate that Ukrainian forces engaged an astonishing 88,000 Russian targets across the occupied territories and inside Russia proper. This represents an operational strike tempo of over 2,800 engagements per day. The human and material toll on the Russian military has been devastating. Over 30,000 Russian personnel were neutralized or severely wounded in May alone, pushing Russia's total 2026 casualty count past the 145,000 mark. According to data compiled by United 24 Media, Ukrainian deep strike assets, primarily long-range kamikaze drones, successfully struck 111 high-value targets inside the Russian Federation in May. These included oil refineries, electrical substations, and munitions factories. The financial damage to Russia's economy is estimated to exceed $1 billion, causing localized fuel scarcities that directly impact the logistics of the Russian army. Even more humiliating for the Kremlin was the psychological blow struck during the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, often dubbed the Russian Davos. As tens of thousands of international delegates and domestic elites gathered to hear speeches about Russia's economic resilience, Ukrainian drones bypassed air defenses to strike industrial targets within the region. The sight of black smoke rising over the city served as a stark, undeniable symbol. Russia can no longer guarantee the security of its own airspace, let alone win a war of aggression. Simultaneously, the Ukrainian Navy, a force operating without a traditional fleet of warships, achieved total dominance in the western Black Sea. Utilizing a sophisticated combination of Magura 5 maritime drones and aerial surveillance, Ukraine conducted over 1,500 maritime security operations. The result: 633 commercial vessels safely navigated the humanitarian corridor to reach ports in Odessa and the Danube River. Russia's Black Sea Fleet, once a symbol of imperial projection, remained blockaded in its ports, utterly incapable of disrupting Ukraine's vital economic lifeline. To sustain this momentum throughout the latter half of 2026, the Ukrainian General Staff has introduced a revolutionary approach to operational logistics known as the Logistics Lockdown Program. Launched on May 27th, this initiative actively codifies asymmetric drone warfare. The Ukrainian Ministry of Defense allocated $113 million to a points-based reward system for frontline units that successfully identify and destroy Russian supply trucks. Fuel tankers and logistical choke points are prioritized for immediate drone resupplies and advanced munitions. Further south, the critical Crimean land bridge, the overland rail and road network connecting mainland Russia to occupied Crimea is facing a similar fate. Swarms of next-generation Ukrainian mid-range drones capable of operating up to 200 kilometers behind the lines have turned the route into a gauntlet of fire. Russian forces have been forced to disperse their supply hubs, drastically increasing delivery times and leaving frontline infantry highly vulnerable. Politically, the geopolitical landscape has altered dramatically. In Washington, despite months of intense political maneuvering and concerns over the shifting stance of the Trump administration, the U.S. House of Representatives passed the Ukraine Support Act by a vote of 226 to 195. While the bill must still pass, the Senate, its passage sends an unambiguous message to Moscow. American institutional support for Kyiv remains intact, laying the groundwork for expanded intelligence sharing and enhanced security assistance. Vladimir Putin, now 73 years old, faces a grim reality. The war he expected to last days has entered its fifth year, and the strategic initiative has slipped entirely from his grasp. Russia is no longer dictating the terms of the conflict. Instead of negotiating from a position of absolute power, the Kremlin may soon be forced to face Ukraine at the negotiating table from a position of profound vulnerability. Ukraine has pulled off the ultimate Uno reverse card of modern warfare. To ensure this pressure remains unyielding, Ukraine has just debuted its newest operational asset, a mysterious, highly advanced long-range drone codenamed the Morgan. Designed specifically to operate in heavily contested electronic warfare environments, this drone is already wreaking havoc on Russia's deep logistical nodes. Is the Morgan the ultimate game changer? Ukraine needs to end this war on its own terms. Click on our next video to find out as we dissect the technical specifications of this new weapon. Thank you for watching, and we will see you on the next battlefield analysis.